Millions of Americans swear by chiropractors, and many physicians swear at them, claiming that chiropractors are unscientific and potentially very dangerous. My guests tonight represent both sides, and they're here to discuss what chiropractors can and cannot do for you. Please meet them now. First, Dr. Stephen Barrett is a psychiatrist, a consumer advocate, and a medical writer. Dr. Louis Sportelli has been a chiropractor for 19 years in rural Pennsylvania. Are chiropractors doctors? Do you have a medical degree?
No, and I don't want a medical degree. If I did, I'd go to med school. But I have a doctor of chiropractic degree. We manipulate the spine very specifically and very delicately.
What do you manipulate it for? What kind of conditions do you treat?
We don't treat conditions. I've just said that.
You don't treat anything?
The body. The fact of the matter remains is there are functional angina cases that go to their cardiologists, have had their cardiovascular system checked, have proven to be normal. They still retain their functional angina, which are fearful constricting chest pains. They go to a chiropractor, they have their dorsal spine manipulated, and by God, you know what happens?
Nothing.
What happens is they lose their functional angina.
That's what you say, isn't it?
That's what's said by thousands of people, incidentally. This is one of the problems, David.
I will answer any letter that comes and send information about chiropractors. If you're going to go to see one, you better know what you're getting into.
Western medicine kind of started as tradition at the turn of the century in the response to quote-unquote quackery.
There has been a deliberate campaign to label anybody who doesn't sell or distribute drugs, surgery, or radiation as a quack.
Your dad's a quack, right?
Your dad's a quack.
My daddy says your daddy's a quack.
My dad said I'd sooner die in a normal fashion than see a quack.
He didn't know what a quack was. He just knew that his dad labeled my dad a quack.
You're quacks, and you're not.
I kind of thought chiropractors were quacks. I don't know why I thought that, I just did. And I think I was like the general public.
Chiropractors are bad, they're dangerous, quacks, pseudoscience. If you keep saying that often enough, people start believing you.
Medical insurance used to not pay for any chiropractic. I mean, in the day, it was like, forget it, it's quackery.
Quackery.
Quacks.
Quacks and charlatans, etc. Quacks!
Almost any time in history, go to Copernicus, go to Galileo, they were considered quacks at their time when they innovated futuristic ideas that were aligned with higher truths.
We were nuts. We were crazy. We were quacks.
My choices were exploratory surgery or a quack. I woke up the next morning and chose the quack.
If helping somebody with a natural approach to healthcare versus a addictive, potentially fatal approach is quackery, then call me a quack every day of the week.
This is the town of Houma, Louisiana, one of the most southernmost parts to the west of New Orleans by about 50 miles. This is where my dad stopped the car when he drove down from Davenport, Iowa after chiropractic school, and this is where he began his practice. It was one of 4 states that had yet licensed the profession. He didn't realize that it was also going to be the last state to license the profession. And the reason being is that the AMA, Political Medicine, at that time had a committee who were charged with containing and eliminating the chiropractic profession. The chairman of that committee happened to be from New Orleans. He wielded great influence in the legislature and in politics in our state. And that's why Louisiana was the last state and why chiropractors in Louisiana were especially demonized.
At the Chicago headquarters of the American Medical Association is the spokesman for the majority of its 110,000 doctor members, able publicist Dr. Morris Fishbein, who opposes any radical departure from long-established medical practice.
We insist that the practice of medicine is a doctor's problem. The doctor is the only one entitled by training, by experience, and by law to take care of the sick. Medicine is still a profession. It must never become a business or a trade, never the subservient tool of a governmental bureaucracy.
You can trace medical racism back to one man. His name was Morris Fishbein. He owned the AMA from 1924 to 1949. He was its executive director, the editor of its journals, He was dubbed the medical Mussolini by his contemporaries because he was such an effective tyrant.
That was an environment that my dad and many other people were practicing in. And it took a lot of courage, it took a lot of conviction, and a lot of belief in what they were doing to stay the course. Not only was it tough making a living back at that time, but it was tough socially and culturally. My older brother was killed in Vietnam. He was the first Louisiana soldier killed in Vietnam, and he's on the wall in the Vietnam Memorial as number 100. Soon after my brother was killed, my mom just went into a depression. She took it very hard, and she wouldn't leave the house. Her dad finally got her out one night. He says, "Pat, come with me, we're going to bowl." He bowled once a week with a group of people in a bowling team. And Mom said, "Okay, I need to start getting out." And within 30 minutes, I recall them coming back home. And Mom had been visibly upset. She was still crying, and she went into her room. And I looked at my dad and I said, "Dad, is it Raymond, my brother?" And Dad said, "No." He says, "There was a medical doctor who happened to be on the other team that we were bowling against. And he made a big stink that he wasn't going to bowl if a chiropractor was going to be on the other team." Your mother, in her state, she kind of went off on him. She says, "I just lost my son in defense of this country. I gave my oldest son up, and you're going to treat my husband and my family this way?" She was really upset about it, and Mom talked about that until almost her dying days. She used to always remember that one incident and how cruel and insensitive medicine could be to her and her husband. Part of this contain and eliminate strategy was they labeled chiropractors unscientific cultists. And that was in an era where the cultists were pretty nasty people. Chiropractors were put right into that boat. Cults back then were Charles Manson, and the evil that he prevailed on those people in California. And then you had a guy like Jim Jones, made all those people drink Kool-Aid. And they all died. It was a mass suicide. And they labeled chiropractors the same as they labeled those types of people. He had no idea at all that this new profession that he loved and he knew he was helping a lot of people with was going to be labeled a cult. Normal people in society would almost revolt when they saw a chiropractor coming because they thought these people were crazy. They were loons. They were cultists. That's what political medicine did to him and to all of his colleagues.
We have a small local community hospital. I'd send patients up there for urinalysis and blood work. They refused to do my blood work on my patients. They refused to do a urinalysis for me. Later I find out that the joke up there was, well, what does a chiropractor want to do a urinalysis for? They probably don't even know what it tastes like. The more you begin to wonder, is there something bigger going on that I can't get my arms around? Every workers' compensation insurance carrier in the United States of America pays for chiropractic. Medicare pays for it.
Did they decide to do that voluntarily, or did you ram laws through the state legislatures to get them to do it?
When we get to the political power and American Medical Association, we'll talk about that.
You didn't answer the question. Did they do it voluntarily?
Well, of course not. They don't do anything voluntarily. The AMA in 1963 formed a committee on quackery whose goal and objective was to contain and eliminate the profession of chiropractic. And they did it in the most clandestine way possible.
A Dr. Sabatier from Louisiana was a member of what was originally called the Committee on Chiropractic, but the powers that be said that sounds too noble. Change it to Committee on Quackery. So your young medical students, the day they opened their locker, ended up with a quack pack, telling the young, impressionable doctors-to-be, male and female, they were killing their patients if they allowed them to go near a doctor of chiropractic. He said, "You are going to get reports from many, many of your patients that they are going to chiropractors and getting help. Say something like this: chiropractors are like little puppies, cute, but rabid. They are killers."
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Mr. Taylor, did you ever hear Dr. Sabatier use the term rabid dog or killer with respect to chiropractors?
Not to my knowledge.
And then comes the day that I recall like it was yesterday. Got a brown unmarked package in the mail. And I took out this ream, literally 500 or some pages. I read the first couple pages and I said to myself, this can't be true.
It purported to be copies of original documents from the American Medical Association and other medical trade associations. They engaged in a nationwide, lengthy, widespread, illegal conspiracy to destroy chiropractic.
This became dubbed Sore Throat. And Sore Throat decided that his very life might be in jeopardy, but he agreed to talk to a group of chiropractors at a seminar.
The guy would get on with a voice synthesizer. He was smart enough not to leave his fingerprints or his voice prints.
He was almost challenging the chiropractor community to do something about this. You have now the data that I've gotten for you. So here was an audience, prepped and listening to the speaker, and all of a sudden, Sore Throat comes on. And he says, I'm a medical doctor, and I've worked for the AMA for a number of years.
Approximately 2 years ago, I finally woke up and found myself working in the middle of a morally corrupt, politically and economically
motivated organization. Wow. Think about those words to the ears of doctors of chiropractic who've been oppressed for all these years.
At first, they maintained that the documents that the Sore Throat had distributed were fake. But then it turned out that we found them out in the state, county, and local society files. And I asked them, where'd you get them? And they said, well, the AMA sent them to us. And then we asked the AMA, why don't you have all of the documents that we're finding out in the boonies? Their answer to me was, well, we gathered all those documents together and the janitor mistook it as garbage and disposed of it. I'm a lawyer, I'm not an idiot.
They were killing off enough people, so it didn't make any difference. Do you know how many they killed off? No, I don't know. In fact, didn't you search for the number of malpractice or deaths attributable to chiropractic on numerous occasions? No, I don't ever remember searching for chiropractic deaths. Isn't that something you'd want to know if you were making a statement that they were killing off so many people? I usually did know. You did know? What was the figure you were able to come up with? I have no figure that I could give you.
His deposition, I think, was so paramount in why ultimately the case was won. He was, to be quite honest, very arrogant. There was one part of the deposition where he was asked, did you know anything about the education of a chiropractor? His answer was, you know, I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know the difference between a chiropractor and an antelope.
I didn't know anything about chiropractic when I went to the AMA. I didn't know anything about chiropractor from an antelope.
When one of the largest political organizations in the world targets you to contain you and eliminate you, and then uses all their powerful forces to bring you down, you better be darn strong to survive that. That's what this profession did. They survived that. And they instilled in those future generations that, yeah, someone's going to be a little skeptical, but there's a reason for that. Understand that reason and go beyond that.
The essence of the findings was this was a profession that in its treatment and diagnostic methods was sophisticated in an area that had been overlooked otherwise in medical science. It was severely against the public interest that the professions were fighting with each other, with faults on both sides. The public and patients would profit so much from these professions actually working together rather than being involved in a marketplace battle.
Does the AMA have power today? Of course it does. Does it have the kind of power that it had decades ago? The answer is no. The AMA's membership is down appreciably. Many physicians don't want to belong to the AMA. But the key is the AMA doesn't need the medical physicians for economic viability. Now, they've got hundreds of millions of dollars as a result of all the publications that they have. And then you take all the publications and multiply that by every pharmaceutical ad, and now you can start to see the inextricable tie between the pharmaceutical companies and the AMA. So from a money position, they're as strong as ever.
There's a macro view. You could take a deep dive into the little pictures. You've got the medical industry, the pharmaceutical industry, the insurance industry, the legal industry, the food industry. You got government regulation. All these things interact and have impact on individual people's lives. And when you take a step back and look at the macro view, you recognize the whole thing's been doctored. But in order to understand all these individual pieces, you really have to take a step back and see the big picture.
What plagues me every day was literally the millions of people who never went to a doctor of chiropractic because they had been brainwashed into believing that chiropractic was not credible. There are some things that are forgivable and some things that are not. I can't tell you how many times patients would come to me in desperation after they had been everywhere and would say, if I only would have known about chiropractic sooner.
Well, I've been trained in martial arts for all my adult life and prior. I'm pretty good. To get good, you kind of have to leave your ego out the door. You got to lose and be willing to lose and learn from it. So I had some numbness all the way around my waist when I would start to run. That's how it started. I figured I'd just tweak something in my back. They sent me to a neurologist. I get a spinal tap, nerve test, CAT scan, MRIs, and he says, you have MS. So I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. I really didn't know how to react because I didn't know how to accept it. This is what you're going to have the rest of your life. Even though I'd been sick for a year, never occurred to me that I wasn't next week going to be better. And so when somebody tells you ain't going to happen, I don't know what to do with that. It didn't sit well for a number of reasons. One, I couldn't really accept it. And then he told me, you cannot exercise the way you work out. You have to be very careful about overheating your core. He even told me, hot tub is too much. If you overheat your core, it'll kick an episode. Going to the gym, working out, I mean, that wasn't just something I do, it's kind of part of who you are. There were 3 medicines at the time. And I remember the funny thing was, he just brought out the 3 boxes and set them down and said, pick one. And I was like, wait a minute, I didn't go to med school, you did. You're supposed to tell me what to do. He said, look, I can give you one, and we could be back in here in 6 months or a year, and it's not really working, so I would take you off of that and put you on this one. I said, look, I want to try everything I can out there, natural, homeopathic, voodoo, before I get on these drugs. Because the list of what it could do for me was this big, and the list of possible side effects is like this, and one of them's suicidal tendencies. That sounded nuts to me. I kept going to the gym for my own well-being, my own psyche. In my mind, if I stopped moving, I may not be able to start again. At my core, I've always felt the body was made to heal itself if it's given what it's supposed to have. I firmly believe that. I'm not going to let this thing define me.
James, tell me why you want to live. What's important for you? How come you're here? In this shape, on this quest, with this attitude.
So I was always looking for different things, and I'm very fortunate. I have past benefits. I worked for Delta Airlines for years. So when I find something interesting, exciting, I can pick up the phone or jump on a plane and go. And so I'd like you to talk to me a little bit about what are we doing wrong? What are we doing right? What should we be doing?
Well, I'm not interested in your MS. I'm interested in you being well and you being healthy. So let's just stop talking about the MS for a second, or whatever the diagnosis that they come in with. And I say, no matter what, between now and the end of your life, and I don't know when that's going to be. What is your greatest chance to have a wonderful experience between now and then? The things that kill 80% of us are chronic illness, lifestyle illness. Literally 8 out of 10 people will die of lifestyle illness, of chronic illness. It's suicide by lifestyle. How we answer the question, why are people chronically ill, determines everything downstream from that. So if you believe people are chronically ill because they have an innate defect genetically, then you don't believe you can prevent. And your solution to get them well isn't about getting them well at all. It's how to palliate them along the predetermined path of worsening chronic illness and early death. And that's the system, isn't it?
So who sold us the bill of goods and why?
Because there's money in sickness, James. It's the leading industry in the world.
The biggest contradiction in our culture today is calling medicine healthcare. Medicine is not healthcare, it's sick care. And when you take sick care and provide it to a culture like healthcare, then you end up with a sick culture. And that's why we spend $2.7 trillion per year on what we call healthcare, and we're incredibly sick as a culture.
I don't think any of us would have a problem spending that much money if we got results, but we're not getting the results for that investment. We're not going to be able to afford these choices. It's a simple, basic reality. It's a fatally flawed system that eventually, most experts believe, will crash. And then we're going to have to rely on solutions that truly address the foundational causes of the healthcare problems that people are facing. Every year, 125,000 people die from properly prescribed prescription drugs.
There is significant pressure from pharmaceutical companies to continue doling out as many medications as possible. These things aren't changed overnight. It's like turning the Titanic. But there's no question, and it makes perfect sense, and there's not a single member of the Western medical community or any CEO of any pharmaceutical company that wouldn't agree. People are better off if they aren't taking so many medications.
When I grew up, you got a drug. You were sick, you took a drug for 7 days, you went off of it, you never took it again. They started selling continuity drugs, and they say, not only this, but we expect you to take this for the rest of your life. We don't want you to get well, because if you get well, you stop our cash flow. There's plenty of cash flow, there's more than enough, but what happens is big pharma's in a scarcity model, and as long as you look out of eyes of limitation, you're gonna see limitation.
The United States represents 5% of the Earth's population, yet we manage to consume over 50% of all prescriptions written worldwide. So we're clearly a target-rich environment for the pharmaceutical industry. I think as a society of physicians, we've got comfortable with the fact that the quickest and easiest way to mitigate that pain is through the form of a pill, as opposed to other alternative means of pain reduction, and that requires effort. That requires me taking time with you.
Because of the current system that we have, where every 5 minutes you're supposed to see another patient and hand out another pill, I think intuitively most physicians realize this isn't medicine. This is just cookbook. They become frustrated and disillusioned and disgusted with what they're doing.
I'm a primary care physician, but what I really do is try to get to the root of why people have needed to come in to see me. And I wasn't able to do that the way I had dreamed of being able to do when I was a kid. Telling people that what they've heard from other doctors is wrong, that's a very risky position for me to be taking.
When a patient interfaces with the healthcare system, it's common today that they're not told all of their options. From validated research studies, we know that 20 to 30% of medications and procedures may not be necessary. We're taught when to operate, but we're not really told when not to operate. The latter is the more difficult thing to master.
It frustrates me to no end that I am part of a system that is broken and doesn't work. There's the science behind medicine, which we can all learn. Then there's the art of medicine, which many never learn. And I'm afraid that that's an art that's dissipating quickly. If we don't do something about it, it's going to be lost art.
I've seen, I would say, a dozen doctors, so-called specialists in each of their fields: heart, spine, brain, everything. There is something inherently wrong deep down inside me. I know that. I've been tested for everything under the sun. I could drop dead tomorrow and I wouldn't know what it was of. And I don't think Western medicine does either. They've been most unhelpful. Nobody has had the good sense to say, Mr. Morris, we don't know what's wrong with you. Instead, they make up all this crap. You have this, now go see that guy. He'll take care of it. And all that time, everybody's passing the buck. I felt increasingly I was just being treated like a number. I really feel my life is in the balance. I think that I need help that Western medicine isn't giving me, and therefore I'm sort of throwing myself at the feet of alternative medicine. I'm willing to try things that I thought were nothing but shamanism.
Big Pharma has taken the power out of the medical doctor's hands. They have commercials on television that say, if you have these symptoms, go see your doctor and get this drug. I mean, when you go to see your doctor, you tell him your symptoms. The doctor's supposed to know what the best drug is for you. You're not supposed to go in and say, I need this drug, I have these symptoms. And it's kind of an affront to what the medical doctor is all about. And then when you look at the side effects of some of these medications, they're worse than having the actual disease that they're trying to cure. They're big business, they're big money. They have taken over what I would consider really true health care, which is prevention first and then getting back to normal that honors the homeostasis or the natural balance that the body is always trying to maintain. James, tell me how old you are.
I'm 52.
52, and you've had MS. You were diagnosed with MS when you were 38 years old?
Yep, so 14 years.
Okay. Tell me the main symptoms, what you experience from a day-to-day basis.
I call it wobbly. My legs just kind of give out.
Yeah.
When it gets bad, I need a cane to walk. And then fatigue, really bad fatigue.
I'm going to begin the exam today on your neck. I'm going to be looking for the same thing that I look for in my other patients who have MS, frozen shoulder. I analyze their spine in a way, even though they're different disorders, and I find a very similar outcome in the examination.
On October of 2009, my car flipped about 5 times, and they found me in the back seat. My neck was broken, face was fractured. One of the issues that I'm having, other than getting out of bed and changing my clothes, is that if I want to move around the house and put on a light, like in this case, if I were to put on this light switch, I have to go like this, and it's paining, but I'll be able to move it once I get there, and then I'll have to assist my hand to bring it back down.
Is that all you can do? Frozen shoulder is a puzzling condition. The patient is unable to bring their arm up alongside their head. They only have about 90 to 120 degrees of what we call abduction. All right, so slowly, let's go ahead and abduct the arms, bring them up over your head. Right there becomes difficult.
Yes.
So bringing it up alongside your ear is very difficult.
It's not going to go.
They do physical therapy that makes them worse, that makes them hurt more and sleep less. Also, a lot of patients get the injection, which is ineffective most of the time. It keeps getting done, but it's not fixing the problem. And I thought to myself, well, it may be a weakening or a malfunction of the spinal accessory nerve. And now I have this paradigm that I built in my head that the skull and the spine support a part of the nervous system that runs the shoulder. And go ahead and bring the arms up, see if they'll come all the way up.
You gotta be kidding me.
Yeah.